spent enough time in uniform to recognize one when he saw it. The woman at the top of the stairs wore a variation of the theme. The straps of her shift rested on her shoulders, perhaps because she had not yet resigned herself to the languid, lounging posture of her sisters, who occupied overstuffed sofas, wide armchairs, and the laps of contented cowboys and miners. She apparently had no use for a corset, and the shift hung straight to the middle of her calves. There was no flash of ruffle to indicate that she wore knickers. It was an intriguing notion that she might be naked under the shift, and the notion was supported by the fact that not only was she without stockings, she was also without shoes. Quill had no memory that he had ever found a barefooted woman immediately desirable, and yet, judging by the stirring in the room as the woman began her descent, he was not alone in his notions. Quill's gaze returned to her face, and he saw that her eyes, whatever the color, were no longer surveying the room, but had found their target. He tracked the direction to the source and discovered a man of considerable height and heft standing in the brothel's open doorway. It occurred to Quill that he might have mistaken the reason for the earlier stir in the room. It was certainly possible the madam, her girls, and her patrons had more interest in the man crossing the threshold than they had in the barefoot whore. Out of the corner of his eye, Quill saw the madam step away from her place beside the upright piano where she had been turning pages for one of the girls. She came into his line of vision as she approached her new guest. Quill recalled that he had been greeted warmly when he entered the house, but not by the madam. She had smiled and nodded at him, acknowledging his presence, but she had not left her post. Instead, one of the girls, whose name he never caught, relieved him of his hat and gun belt and escorted him to his present chair. Except to fetch him a whiskey, she had not left his side. Clearly the madam had decided this customer deserved her special attention, although whether it was because he was a favorite or because of his considerable size and the potential threat it posed, Quill had no way of knowing. It occurred to him to put the question to the girl at his side, but then he became aware that her fingers were curled like talons around his forearm where they had only been resting, lightly, moments before. Posing the question seemed unnecessary. This man represented someone worth fearing. The madam smiled brightly, if a shade stiffly. She held out her hand for his hat and gun belt, neither of which he gave her. Her extended arm hung awkwardly before she withdrew it. She took a visible breath and then spoke. "We've been expecting you, Mr. Whitfield. I suppose this means you've heard about our new girl, the one I found especially for you." She tilted her head ever so slightly toward the stairs. Quill thought the gesture was unnecessary. Mr. Whitfield's gaze had been riveted on the woman on the staircase since he entered the brothel. Quill was not convinced that Whitfield had even seen the madam's outstretched arm or been aware that she wanted to relieve him of his gun. "By God, you did, Mrs. Fry," he said under his breath. "I'll be damned." "You will get no argument from me." Quill suppressed a grin at the madam's cheek. Mrs. Fry had spoken softly, but she was in no danger of being heard even if she had shouted the retort. Whitfield was paying her no mind. Whitfield lifted his hat, slicked back his hair with the palm of his hand, and then replaced the black Stetson. He sucked in his lips as he took a deep breath. He had the manner of a man calming himself, a man who did not want to appear too eager or at risk for losing control. Quill's gaze swiveled back to the stairs. The woman was standing on the lip of the bottom step. He could see that she was not as young as she appeared from a distance. He had taken her for 18 and no more than 20 when she appeared on the landing. He revised that notion now, adding 4, maybe 5 years to his estimate. There was a certain maturity in her level stare, a composure that would not have been carried so easily by someone younger or someone inexperienced. If the madam had hoped to present a virgin to Mr. Whitfield, she had very much mistaken the matter. It did not seem Mrs. Fry would have made such an obvious error. That could only mean that something else was afoot. Quill wished he had resisted giving over his colt. It would have been a comfort just then to have it at his side. Whitfield's gaze did not shift to the madam when he asked, "What's her name?" "Katie. Katie Nash." Whitfield's lips moved as he repeated the name, but there was no accompanying sound. He nodded slightly as though satisfied it suited her, and it struck